Hello and welcome back to Seagulls Central. Massive news in the last 24 hours to jump on. But thank you very much for coming and clicking on this video, coming back to the channel and getting involved. As I always say, if you're new here and this is your first video, thank you so much for coming. My name's MacDonald. This is my channel. It's a really, guys, I just got to say to you, thank you so much for everyone who's watching these videos and getting involved in the comments. We're growing quick. We're nearly at 2k subs. We only hit 1k subs probably a month ago, maybe even less. So we're growing very quickly. And if you find yourself coming back to these videos and you're enjoying the content, please do join the community of people that are subscribing to this channel. It really means a lot. And I'm loving it. We're making videos every day at this point. So let's hope this continues. And I hope you guys continue loving it. And it's hard not to make videos pretty much every day when you've got big stories like this dropping on our lap, dropping on the table, on the desk for us to talk about. Last night, big story dropping out of Holland around the future of Brighton defender Jan Paul van Hecke, obviously our player of the season last season, and let's not even begin to talk about that player of the season curse, but 25-year-old centre-half, one of our best players. Last season, he was our best player. The story coming out of Holland is this. His contract, which is set to expire in 2027, he is refusing to sign a new one. He's not going to sign on, and he's looking for a move, ideally this summer. Puts Brighton in a bit of a tricky position. This has happened a lot for Brighton over the last few years, in recent seasons and recent transfer windows. But usually Brighton are in good positions. I think personally, my view is that they're still in a good position here. Yes, 2 years left on a deal. Maybe they will be in a position where they're forced to sell. Or maybe there will be some kind of pact made between the player and the club in terms of getting him a new contract, which then allows him to move in the not too distant future. Let me read out the article that dropped last night that Brighton fans picked up on last night, coming from an outlet called Voetbal International. I've butchered that. Basically, Football International. Voetbal International in Holland. The story is this, and this is the literal translation. Jan Paul van Hecke will no longer renew his contract with Brighton Hove Albion. The defender has received several offers from the club, but he seems to prefer a new step. This has been confirmed by insiders. The Premier League club even wanted to make him the highest paid player ever, but the Dutchman doesn't want that. Van Hecke has a dream of playing in the Champions League and thinks this won't work with Brighton. He'll never force a transfer, that's what the article says, but his contract won't be renewed. Several sources are confirming this. As a result, Premier League clubs are now on alert. Newcastle United have inquired this week. Tottenham also are following him. Apparently, Brighton's asking price is 50 million euros. That would surprise me. And a little added on extra is that the club NAC, obviously his previous club that we bought them from, I think it was in 2020-ish. They have a 7.5% resale clause to whatever deal we do. So, God, how do we even react to this? It's a huge story, and it's a massive blow to Brighton, I think. I've seen a lot of people over the last 24 hours, loads of people wetting the bed, then the kind of people on the other side going, you need to stop wetting the bed, it's not such a big deal. My view is this. I think this is a blow. I don't think this is catastrophic. I don't think this means that we're going to lose him tomorrow. I don't think that means that we're forced to sell him. But I think what it does mean is that Brighton are slightly cornered now. A player with 2 years left, maybe with an optional third year. Brighton probably are in a position now where if they want to make good money on Jan Paul van Hecke at this stage, based on what we know, does a summer sale, this transfer, get them the best value for money? Now, maybe the club will think, look, if we can get another year out of him and then sell him when he's got 1 year left on his deal, at a cut price, probably at half of his value, if that. Does that put us in a better position than selling him now for around his market value, but then not getting the best of this player this season? I think Brighton this season are taking their squad very seriously and believe they have a real shot at achieving Champions League football, or at least kind of top 6-7 football again and getting back into Europe. This is, shown by the fact that they've gone and bought a lot of players for a lot of money in the last year or so, but also the fact that they have kept on to players like Van Hecke, like Baleba, like Mitoma, turning down big money moves. I think the club want to go into this season having bought a very strong squad last summer, supplemented it this summer, but then also crucially having kept the majority, 80% of their best players, let's say from kind of the last year or so. so that we can go into the season with a real momentum and a real quality. I think the club's view will be that that they're going to do everything they can to not sell him this summer. But where does that leave it? Look, a lot of Brighton fans online are getting quite hung up around the comments that he made, the fact that he's our player of the season, the fact that, it's the curse of the player of the season, the fact that also lots of people viewed him as a future captain. My view was always with Jan Paul van Hecke, people would go, this guy's going to be the captain when Dunk retires. This was like even 2 years ago under kind of that first De Zerbi season. I remember thinking to myself, like, yeah, well, he probably won't be here when Dunk retires. Like, if we're going to be completely honest, and that's going to come to fruition now. He would be a perfect captain material, but the idea that his level isn't above Brighton is insane. He should be playing for a Champions League club now. He should be playing for a club in the top end of European football, at least at the top kind of conventional top 5-6 of the Premier League in terms of clubs. He's absolutely of that quality, and at 25 years old, you would be wanting to make that move. I look at a team like Liverpool, who and the options they have at centre half. They've got Van Dijk, 34 years old, Joe Gomez, injury prone, and Ibrahim Konate. They've only got 3 real proper centre halves this season. That would be a great move for them on a cheap deal compared to the money they're spending. I know they're going to want to get other deals over the line first. Tottenham also apparently looking at him. I think that'd be a brilliant move for Tottenham, getting a top Premier League defender, being able to replace someone like Christian Romero, who looks like he's going to be out the door soon. I don't know. If I had to make... I think the thing that kind of stings a little bit for me would be this. It was the comments he made after obviously winning that Premier League, the Brighton Player of the Season back in May, and he was asked, on the night by Jim White around kind of the history of the Player of the Season at Brighton, conventionally leaving the club pretty soon, or leaving the club that summer after winning it. And it's happened in the last 3-4 years. He said these quotes: "I know the history of this award, but I'm really happy at the club. There are 3 more games left, and that's what I want to do, get into Europe. I don't have any plans for now to leave, but you never know. This club is special, and I'm not going to leave it for another not special club." Essentially saying if he's going to leave Brighton, he's going to leave only for a club that he believes provide just as good an opportunity that the Albion do. And what is that opportunity? Well, it's obviously Champions League football, isn't it? I guess the thing is with those quotes, I remember at the time thinking like, come on, because it's like someone kind of finally going, yeah, you know what, I've won this award and I'm not going to go. I'm not leaving. I think at the end of the day, this isn't going to be a money thing for him, is it? It's about opportunity. It's about him trying to play in European football, and he's obviously of that level. What do I think will happen? Here's what I actually think is going to happen. I don't think Brighton will sell him this summer, despite the fact that we seemingly, with only 2 years left on a deal, it might seem that he wants that move and he's pushing for it, and Tottenham are hot on the heels and Newcastle are hot on the heels. I think Brighton will dig their heels in and they won't sell him this summer. What I wouldn't be surprised is if something like this happens. Do you remember with Alexis McAllister, there was a lot of talk around his future. He was going to be out of contract, but we all kind of suspected it would be his last season with the Albion. But he signed a new contract. He signed a new contract pretty soon after the World Cup, after he came back and won the World Cup. And was off in that summer, the best part of 6 to 7 months later. And they'd obviously put a kind of, I remember The Athletic worded it at the time, kind of like it was like a transfer enabling mechanism, aka it's a release clause. Like the club obviously just didn't want it to be called a release clause. They put essentially a release clause in his contract just to say, look, if a club in this summer coming up, if a club pays this amount of money with these add-ons, you can go. And I would maybe imagine that Brighton would do a similar deal with Van Hecke, where it'd be like, look, we want to keep you this summer. We'll let you go next summer. That's absolutely fine. No issue. But next summer, there's only 1 year left in your deal. We'll probably get a pretty terrible price for you. So could you sign a kind of 2-3 year contract? But in that contract, we'll have a clause that says, if next summer a club bids 50 million quid for you, then you will be able to go and speak to that club and we can do that deal. I would imagine that's what we're going to see. Now, I'm sure now I've said it, I'm going to touch some wood here. I'm sure now I've said that, that's obviously not going to happen. And we're going to see August the 20th or something. We're going to get a bid from Tottenham and he's going to move there and we're going to be screwed. However, I do think Brighton have a real purpose and a real intent this summer with around what they want to do in terms of their signings or the way they want to build this squad and the way they want to try and keep their best players. And I wouldn't be surprised if that is a kind of mechanism, God, that word again, but a mechanism that we try and do to try and get ourselves a good price. I guess the question is, this summer, right, we lose Van Hecke and we deal with it, but then we've got kind of Dunk, Buscagli, unproven, Coppler, unproven, and then like Igor, and obviously who's probably out the door, and then Webster, who's definitely not available this season, at least for the most part of it. And then like Freddie Simmons, like you got a couple of academy players. You're really relying on Coppola, Buscagli and Dunk if we lose Van Hecke. That would be pretty rough, but maybe it would be better than this. That would be if we sold him this summer. Would it be worse though if we sold him next summer? We also sold Baleba next summer, and then we also lost, say, Dunk through retirement. I don't think he will retire next season, but let's just say he retired in the summer. What would we do? What's worse? Is it... My personal view is kind of the old, like, what's the phrase? Like, bird in the hand is two in the bush. Kind of like, it's better to just have the players, isn't it, now? I would almost rather have the players now and just deal with that next summer. Have a year of recruitment research, get the club in order to work out the succession planning, rather than now, okay, we get a better price and maybe it's less of a hit if we lose him now and then Baleba next year. It's a bit more of an incremental blow, that. But actually, maybe you just think, you know what, this season, let's just flip and go for it. Like, let's just go and have a massive season with Van Hecke, with Baleba, with Dunk, with Mitoma, and then next summer, let's just take it from there. Maybe Watson will be ready to step up into Mitoma's role. Maybe Buscagli and Coppola will be ready to really press into that defence next season as the two, and then we can supplement from there. I think maybe that will be how the club view it. Look, Van Hecke's obviously going to go in the next year, 18 months. It's obviously going to happen. You know, God forbid he might even go in the next 6 weeks. However, I think the club and their succession planning obviously plans for all of this. My prediction will be that we will hold out till next summer. We will put some kind of mechanism in his contract, in a new contract, which allows him to move on, whether they will brand it as a new contract, whether it will even be announced. But I think that will be what happens. I think at that point then, we'll have the big club circling and it'll be fair enough and Brighton will get a fair price. Look, it's tough. He obviously wants to go and play European football. He obviously wants to leave. He obviously doesn't think Brighton can provide him with that Champions League elite European football. And to be honest, that is completely fair enough, isn't it? Like, this season, he's not going to be playing Champions League football and he's going to want to do that. He's got a World Cup coming up next year. He should really be one of the starting centre-backs alongside Virgil van Dijk next summer going into the World Cup. He maybe thinks if he's not playing top European football this season, that will hinder his ability to do that. Perhaps that is right. But it's not going to be a situation where he's saying, like, I'm going to push for a move, I'm going to go on strike, I'm going to do what Alexander Isak done, what Leandro Trossard has done at Brighton, or even Caicedo kind of... Do you remember that moment where God, that was mental. I remember that night a couple of summers ago where all the news came out about him, and then the club had to come out and talk about the way that they were reintegrating him into the side, but we all kind of knew that he was going to go, and then he was kind of training alone, and then he started training with De Zerbi. It was, God, yeah, that was a lot. I don't think that kind of thing is going to happen with Van Hecke. I think he's, the report says he's never going to force a transfer. So let's hope that's true. But it is a sticky one. It's a tricky one. It's a difficult one. It's not a shocking one, but I think when you see these stories drop, it has set the whole fan base into meltdown, understandably. But look, I don't think it's bedwetting, to be honest. I think it is a worrying sign, but I also don't think, my view is I don't think this summer we're going to lose him. That's my bet. Clip this. We'll come back to this. I'll be happily proven wrong. I'm not going to die on that hill that we're not going to lose him. But my view probably is that we might be all right this summer. Who knows? Look, I'm excited. We've got obviously a pre-season match against Southampton coming up on Saturday, where we're going to be able to see a few more of the new signings. We're going to be able to see Costas. We're going to be able to see Seamas. We're going to hopefully be able to see Tommy Watson, maybe a Coppola and Buscagli as well. Will Van Hecke be involved in that? That will be a big question to answer. So far, he's been ever present in pre-season, playing a part in all of our games. Will he be there on Saturday as part of that 11? You'd imagine, or at least the squad, you'd imagine he will. The report says he's not going to push for a transfer. That's not where we are. Let's hope that that's the position we're in, where he is in the squad, he is involved as usual, and this is just kind of newspaper rumblings. I remember this journal, Voetbal International, I think they were the ones who reported around us and the Kudus deal, which obviously didn't end up kind of properly materialising. So they were a little bit inaccurate there. Let's hope that they are equally as inaccurate on this one for Brighton's favour. Thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button, hit a like and get in the comments. Let me know. Are we going to sell Van Hecke this summer? Are we going to be forced to sell Van Hecke this summer? What position are we left in? What would you do? Would you sell him this summer and wait, or would you use him this season, then sell him next season, but take the hit of maybe more outgoings? What would you do? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to know your thoughts. I will see you after the Southampton game on Saturday. Thank you very much for watching. And as always, up the Albion.